Hello fellas. Welcome back to Top 5 Choices. This is Haley from Top 5 Choices, and I hope you all are doing good. In today's video, I am going to do a detailed review and pick the top 5 best student laptops, 2022. After doing proper researches, we came to the conclusion that meets the best in terms of overall. Kindly leave a like if you find this helpful, and I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel and turn on post notifications if you haven't. We will be also providing affiliates link to purchase from Amazon. Kindly use it for best offers and purchase from anywhere in the world. We'll be back with more videos. The NDX 36013's touchscreen display measures 13.3 inches diagonally, a common screen size for ultra-portables. It's available only in Full HD, 920 by 1080 pixel resolution, which I find perfectly adequate for most tasks, though you may occasionally see slightly fuzzy text. The laptop doesn't have the option of a 4K resolution or OLED display, both of which are available on the more expensive Spectre X36013. Our review unit's display has an LED backlight with a rated brightness of 400 nits, which is perfectly viewable in most indoor situations. Entry-level models have a dimmer 300 nit panel. HP also offers the NDX 360 with a 1000 nit display with integrated privacy filter, though I've found that while such screens do block adjacent seat snoops, they're harder to read and will likely only appeal to people who frequently access sensitive data in tight quarters. The display extends almost completely to the edges of the laptop, making the bezels extremely thin on the sides. The top bezel is slightly thicker to accommodate one of the NDX 36013's niftiest features, a 720p webcam with a built-in privacy shutter. HP uses this automatic shutter on a few of its most recent laptop models, including the otherwise ho-hum NV17, and it's the best solution I've seen yet to addressing the problem of accidentally leaving your camera on. When you're not using the webcam, simply press the key to the right of the power button. You'll hear a faint click and see the white cover snap shut almost instantaneously. This is far better than placing a piece of tape over the webcam, and it's more elegant than a physical slider that requires you to close it manually. The only minor downside is that the mechanism takes up enough space that there's no room for IR sensors to let you log into Windows 10 via face recognition. You can use the fingerprint reader mounted on the keyboard for passwordless logins instead. The Dell XPS 13 looks sleek and modern, but there are some polarizing aspects to the design. On the plus side, the XPS 13 is quite attractive with its CNC machined aluminum and glass body, and it weighs only 2.7 pounds with a svelte footprint of 11.6 by 7.8 by 0.6 inches. You can take your pick from two finishes, kind of like two flavors of the Star Wars Force. There's light, platinum, and dark, graphite, and both versions use a clean tone-on-tone design to minimize distractions. The touchpad is so seamless, though, that you can't see where it starts and ends. It's integrated into the palm rest and provides haptic responses to touch. This setup worked well during our brief hands-on time, but it may take some getting used to. The bigger adjustment for most will likely be the new capacitive touch function row, which lets you toggle between function and media keys. Given that Apple ditched the touch bar for its MacBook Pro, it's a bit of a surprise to see another laptop maker embrace something similar. But the good news is that the keys never change their position based on what you're doing, they're always the same. Touch typists should enjoy using the Dell XPS 13 Plus. It features a zero-lattice keyboard with larger keycaps, and Dell says there's a deeper dish, 0.3mm, supporting the layout. During my hands-on time, I didn't mind the lack of space between the keys, and typing was fairly comfortable overall with a good amount of travel. I wish the down and up arrows were larger, but generally speaking, the XPS 13 Plus typing experience is satisfying. The Dell XPS 13 Plus continues to feature a four-sided Infinity Edge 13.4-inch display, but this time around Dell says that it reduced the number of layers to improve clarity and reduce weight. In person, the Dell XPS Premium's OLED display looked bright and vibrant, but there's a wide range of options. It starts with the FHD Plus 1920 by 1200 panel with 500 nits of brightness, and there's a touchscreen version of the same display. The Lenovo Flex 5 is an attempt to bring the goodness of the Yoga series, which is basically a 2-in-1 form factor, to a more affordable segment. Let's start off with the color here. The Lenovo IdeaPad Flex 5 comes in the Sol Graphite Gray color option. This color looks classy and looks premium in the first look itself. It has a soft touch finish with metallic coating on the front with small metal Lenovo branding placed towards the right, while the rest of the area remains plain. Opening up the laptop, you will be greeted with a 14-inch screen, keyboard and trackpad combo along with 2 front-firing speakers. Right below the keyboard, you will find the fingerprint scanner. The machine comes with 360-degree rotatable hinge, which is built fairly well and sturdy material. The laptop weighs 1.5 kgs and has a thickness of 17.9 mm. This combo is considered as a thin and light laptop. The high mechanism is quite smooth and I did not have any issues. Lenovo claims that the hinge can survive up to 25,000 opening and closing actions over a course of 4 years, which is 17 times a day on average. On the left of the laptop, there is a barrel charging port, HDMI 1.4b port, USB-C port with power delivery certification, and microphone combo jack. To the right side, you get 2 USB 3.1, Gen 1, ports, an SD card reader, and a power button. The power button acts as the regular power button on your smartphones. It works both in laptop and tablet mode. To the bottom, you get the air vent out and rubberized pads, which provide grip. On the inside, the Lenovo IdeaPad Flex 5 is powered by AMD Ryzen 5 4500U processor, which makes the Flex 5 one of the cheapest laptops in India with Ryzen 5 4000 series chipset. It is a 6-core CPU with a base clock speed of 2.3 GHz and turbo clock speed of up to 4 GHz. To handle the graphics, there is AMD Radeon R5 GPU on board, which is decent for light to medium tasks. The MacBook Air's performance, powered by the M1 processor and 16 GB of RAM, is phenomenal. When I split its screen between 20 Chrome, Intel, not Universal, tabs and a 1080p YouTube video plus Apple's Mail and Photos app, Pixelmator, again, an Intel app, and 1Password, Intel, again, in the background, I never saw anything close to a hiccup. Oh, and in the background, 20 GB of 4K video was being airdrop transferred, while everything stayed smooth and stable. During a group call, I even found time to play around with iOS apps, downloading and opening the Overcast podcatcher, HBO Max and the game Among Us. All while a 4K YouTube video of a chef cooking played on my laptop monitor. I played around in each of those apps, so I could start an Adventure Time episode, download a podcast and drag my Lil Among Us guy around on screen. Yes, I'm very good at multitasking. Most of the time, the MacBook Air with M1 felt performance-wise like it was identical, if not faster, than the 2020 Core i5 MacBook Pro I've used to test Big Sur, or the 2017 Core i7 MacBook Pro work computer I relied upon. This includes when I connected an external monitor. Before this, I was a bit skeptical, even with Apple's boasts of 3.5x improved performance versus the Intel MacBook Air released earlier this year, because I've always pushed my MacBooks to the limit and needed a MacBook Pro, and not an Air, to do my work. This MacBook Air? It feels like a Pro. And let's see how that shakes out in benchmarks, and I'll note that not all of our tests were done with universal versions of apps, and Intel versions aren't optimized for the M1. The Air scored 5,962 on the Geekbench 5.1 Intel multi-core test, which was practically in a dead heat with the 5,925 from the M1 MacBook Pro. The Air soundly beat the 5,084 from the ZenBook 13 and the 5,319 from the XPS 13, both tested with the Intel Core i7-1165G7 CPU and 16 GB of RAM on the comparable Geekbench 5.2 test. The old Intel MacBook Air Y series Intel CPU mustered only 2,738. The Acer Aspire 5 feels like a refuge from circa 2015. The slightly dated design is notable chiefly for big, fat bezels top and bottom of the 14-inch display. That said, slim side bezels at least ensure fairly compact overall proportions. At 1.7 kilograms and 17 millimeters thick, portability is decent and is aided by the compact 45W power supply. If you want something more stylish, head to our Asus VivoBook 15 vs Acer Aspire 5 comparison. The Asus is a slicker-looking laptop for a similar price, but there are compromises elsewhere. It's worth noting the power supply uses an old-school barrel connector. The Aspire 5 does have USB Type-C connectivity, but only for data. You can't charge it via USB-C, more's the pity. Still, one fringe benefit of the relative bezel bulge is plenty of space up top for proper webcam location. Your zoom accomplices won't have to suffer the up-nose angle that blights some slim bezel laptops, at least. Another design throwback is the somewhat stingy plastic trackpad. If you've tried one of the modern-style larger glass-topped trackpads, it's awfully hard to revert. The Acer's trackpad feels constrained, limiting, and a little cheap by comparison. Still, it's reasonably solid, which is a sentiment that applies more broadly to the Acer Aspire 5. With its metal keyboard surround and screen enclosure, it feels ready to take a beating. The only exception is the keyboard. The bed is prone to a bit of bounce. The screen hinge is likewise robust, if anything it's a bit too stiff. Try to lift the Aspire 5 screen lid single-handedly, and the entire chassis comes along for the ride. Bummer. As for ports and connectivity, on the right-hand side of the chassis you'll discover a plain old USB Type-A 2.0 socket and a headphone jack. On the left there's HDMI, a pair of 5 gigabits per second USB 3.1 ports, plus a USB Type-C connector, again running at 5 gigabits per second. The only conspicuous omission is an SD card reader. Audio-wise, the Acer Aspire 5 is configured with a pair of bottom-firing stereo speakers at the front of the chassis. In terms of clarity and soundstage imaging, they're not actually all that bad. But the total absence of anything akin to bass and also very little by way of mid-range results in a very thin overall audio experience.